Come on in, come on in. It's Sunday, so it must be time for Set It Up Sunday. I am Renita Alexander, the Leadership Locksmith, and your host for this weekly conversation I've been having for a few months on how to set up your week, your month, your year, your life for success in whatever way you define success. So come on in and join the conversation. Say hey if you are here live. And even if you join us after the fact, you can say hey whenever you decide to come in. I'm checking the phone to see if I can see comments, to see who's here. Hey, Kathy. How are you? Good to see that you're here. I just got back from a fashion show. So, local Chicago icon Barbara Bates has been in the fashion business for about 35 years. And so she celebrated 35 years tonight with a fashion show. Barbara is a philanthropist. She is, in addition to her career as a designer, she has created a foundation where she gives money toward cancer research. And so there's actually been several walks that she sponsored over the last few years. Of course, not in the last couple of years, not this year and last year, but I've been a part of that and just supported Barbara when I could. This dress that I'm wearing is a Barbara Bates dress. So I probably have a little bit more makeup on, a little bit more dressy for Sunday night than I normally am, but that is why. So it was really great to see people out and about, for the most part, wearing masks. So anyway, hopefully you have had a wonderful weekend, however you wanted to spend it, either resting or enjoying friends and family. I did a little bit of both and watch some Alabama football because, Roll Tide. Anyway, so this Sunday is all about self-awareness. I've been talking about self-awareness in social media, on my social media accounts for this past week, all a part of the leading yourself. So leading yourself first is the first step to being an effective leader. And so I've been spending time the last few weeks on all the aspects that are important to leading yourself. And of course, that most important one is self-awareness. So here's the thing. Have you ever encountered a toxic leader? Have you ever been a toxic leader? Have you ever had somebody pull you aside and, question something about what you were doing from a leadership perspective? And if you have encountered a toxic leader or have you been that person, do you think that that was the intention? If it was you, was that your intention? If it was someone else, do you think that's what they intended? There are people in leadership positions all across the world who just don't understand leadership. And the first part of that is they're not particularly self-aware. And so the self-aware leader, I always say self-awareness is a strategic advantage, especially if you are a leader. Because, when you have a level of self-awareness, when you're aware about yourself, there's certain things that you know about yourself. What do you need to be that positive leader, that encouraging leader? What do you need to create a culture where people can be themselves and can bring their best selves, their strengths, however they show up in the best way, show up in the best way so they can show up in the best way in the workspace. So that is the kind of leader you want to be. I think most people would want to be, but unfortunately, we don't always know how to be that leader. And so understanding, your strength so that you can also recognize the strengths of others, understanding what your triggers are, understanding what your values are. We all have different values. We all have different perspectives when we show up in our workspace. So just embracing, being able to embrace those differences is a leadership skill, but you have to kind of know that about yourself, that, if you are the kind of person that maybe takes umbrage when somebody has different, an idea that's different from yours, maybe understanding why that is so. So all of those things that can help you be a better leader is important for you to be aware of. And so the awareness is the first part. But what I also wanted to share tonight is some ways that you can develop that awareness. And so I shared some information earlier this week from an article. But I want to just share, and some of the things that I shared earlier this week are some of the things that I talk about, but I just kind of wanted to talk about it sort of in the way that I talk about self-awareness. And so there's certain things that I think are important to developing a sense of self, developing an awareness about yourself. And so that first thing is that just, that being mindful about what it is that you're feeling, and then being mindful, observing those feelings without judgment. Here's the thing. We all have emotions. Emotions, I mean, they are there to tell us something about how we are experiencing the world. There is nothing wrong with having emotions. If we didn't have emotions, then, you might wonder what is wrong with you. Emotions are human things, human feelings. That's just perfectly human, perfectly normal for us to have emotions. And so the mindfulness part of that is just to observe what is going on. How are you feeling? Being aware of how you're feeling. We sometimes feel things in different parts of our body. So, we get that feeling in our gut. We may feel something at the back of our neck. We may feel the hairs kind of prickle on our arms. That's our body's way of, responding to what we're experiencing in the external world. And so it's important to be aware of those things. I've talked about in this space that our emotions hit our emotional center first before they hit the prefrontal cortex, which is the front part of the brain. So our bodies are wired so that the emotions hit, or the feelings hit that emotional center first. That experience hits the emotional center first. So we're wired to respond emotionally. But if we can be mindful of what we're feeling, we can connect that emotional center to the logic center, which is located in the front of our brains. And the more we are able to kind of make that connection, the more emotionally intelligent we become. And then we can choose how to respond. It doesn't mean that we, would respond maybe differently if we were just reacting to that emotion. But when we can apply that logic to it, we can think about, well, how might this impact the person? How might this affect the person that we're encountering? What may be the long-term consequences of our response? And so we get an opportunity to respond in a way that we want, that will get us the things that we want. So that developing, it's going to help us develop that emotional intelligence, which is the next part. So practicing that mindfulness by observing your emotions is the first part, and then the next part is developing that emotional intelligence. The more you can make the connection between kind of what you're feeling and then how you respond, again, the more emotionally intelligent you're going to be. Just taking that awareness, observing what you might be feeling, and then making that connection and choosing how you respond. Another thing that we can do that's going to help us be more self-aware is when we focus on the what versus the why. you know why we're feeling what we're feeling, I don't know, because we're wired to feel that way, because of all the things that we maybe have experienced as children. We're often responding to things from our, 2-year-old self, our 5-year-old self, our 10-year-old selves when we were trying to figure out the world. So, you know, going down the why path can, that may be necessary for you to grow, but in the immediate in the immediate present, you might want to ask yourself, what was happening in the room that made you respond the way you did, right? So um the asking the what question can help you be a little bit more objective versus, a what was influencing, what were the factors influencing a particular outcome or a particular response versus, why don't I do this or why did I do that, right? So, being objective about why you're responding or about what you're responding to versus why you're responding the way that you are. And then another thing that you can do is before we act on some thoughts, we've thought it in our heads, in our minds. And so if we can envision the best version of ourselves, the most mindful, the most present, the most aware, the person that is, acting in our highest good, our highest selves, if we can, respond or think of ourselves in that way, in our ideal selves, with all of our, focused on our purpose and our dreams and our aspirations and connected to what we're good at, our abilities, our personalities, all of those things, we can think about that's how we want to show up. And so before we can act on it, we have to think about it. And so just thinking about that highest version of yourself, envisioning that highest version, the best version of yourself can absolutely help you perform or act in that way. And then one of the other things that I wanted to share with you is, asking for feedback. One of my favorite books that I use a lot in leadership training is this book called Thanks for the Feedback. And it's not something we normally say, thanks for the feedback. It's not, we don't, we're sometimes dreading feedback because it's not in alignment with our picture of ourselves. But think about it. We don't know how we show up in a room. We can't experience our energy or, our facial expressions or that kind of thing. What we may think is, pleasant, somebody else may feel is maybe unpleasant. And of course, we all are responding to everybody else from our perspective, but it may be helpful to get some feedback from somebody that you know and trust, right? And then at the end of the day, on any feedback, you get to decide how you respond. You can say, what, that sounds, that it sounds like it could make sense. I'll take that into consideration. Or you can say, what, yeah, thank you for the feedback, but, I think I'm going to do what I've been doing or, take another course. And then the last thing I want to share is this idea of journaling. So I'm a big fan of journaling. One of the things I do very consistently is a gratitude journal that I do in the morning. But one of the things I've tried to do, and I'm not as consistent about this, but I've been trying to do this thing called savoring in the evening. And so that is kind of where you think about some of the things that, happen during the day. So if I'm grateful in the morning to start my day, maybe I can savor in the evening. And that's another one of the ways that you can be more self-aware is savor or reflect or use a journal to sort of be aware, to increase your awareness, or even process your feelings about what happened to you during the rest during the day. So, just a way of paying attention to kind of what's happening in your life and then how you responded to it. What was something that you did good? What was a challenge for you? And, how did you respond to the feelings that you were having? Did you respond in a way that you wanted to? And so that again, that paying attention to that is going to help you be more aware. And so, just sort of in closing, before I end this for the night, I just want to say, that self-awareness thing, it's a journey. I am a seasoned person, a seasoned woman here, and I continuously discover more things about myself. And so it's a journey that can be ongoing. One of the other things I always say is grow or die. And so as we grow in self-awareness, we continue to be present. We continue to be contributing people in this world. So before you can be the leader that you are called to be, it's so important to understand the leader you are, and the way to do that is to grow more self-aware. So that's my time for the evening. I try to keep this short, about 15 minutes. So any questions or comments? So we got somebody agreeing here. Thanks, Kathy. I appreciate that. Kathy says this is fantastic. Just little, tips, that things I have learned along the way. That's all I'm trying to do here is, we want to be as successful as we can be. And to be successful, we have to be intentional. We have to be intentional about so many things, about how we show up and how we are present to ourselves and to each other. So, I'm not seeing any comments. Let me just see if I can see anything on the. Oh, Kevin's on here. Hey, Kevin, that's you on here. So good to see you on here. Well, thank you both so much for that's all I'm seeing live. So thank you so much for being here with me on a Sunday night. You could be anywhere else, so I definitely appreciate that you're here. And if you're not here live, but you encounter this Set It Up Sunday later on, if you have tips that you want to share with us on how to be more aware, just feel free to share those in the post. I will. I'll respond if people have comments that they want to make. But those are just some things that I have discovered. But again, if I'm not the sage on the stage, I'm here to share with you what I've learned along the way. So if you have tips that you want to share, feel free to do so. All right. Having said that, thank you again for joining me. And I'm going to give you back the rest of your Sunday evening. I'll be right here again next week for next Sunday's version of Set It Up Sunday. See you then.